Welcome back. You are watching The Fix. I'm Karima Brown. Now we look at the weekend newspapers with Assistant Editor at News24, Peter Du Toit. Peter, welcome to The Fix. Thank you so much for making the time to come to us. We've got, the whole lot here. The City Press is a really interesting story for me. What do you make of it? Is it credible? What does it tell us?
Well, Karima, the spies are everywhere this morning, aren't they? On the front page of Sunday Times, front page of City Press, on the inside of Sunday Times, they're in digital media. And City Press's lead story is about a report that was commissioned by the Ministry of State Security in 2014 into the so-called SARS rogue unit.
Yes.
And the public protector seemingly has interest in that report. She's gotten a report of a copy of the report illegally, it seems. Now there seems to be conflict between the public protector and the minister. So these wars and these conflicts are heating up, and obviously that ties in with the Sunday Times reporting on page 1 about the report that came out yesterday afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, is there anything more frustrating than a massive report like that dropping late on a Saturday? Which just shows us the dire state in which our intelligence services find itself in.
Well, it's clearly, what Cyril Ramaphosa has done by starting this commission of inquiry into the security, into the intelligence agencies, is really sort of thrown a Molotov cocktail into it.
Yes.
I presume that the City Press story about the public protector versus the new spy boss, by the way, not the old one, is a sort of proxy Zuma Ramaphosa war going on there. The story about what this commission of inquiry headed by, I think, Sydney Mufamadi has found is quite extraordinary. What these people have been getting up to, and he's pulled the guy who was in charge of special operations. Because remember, Zuma combined all of the agencies into one. The guy in charge of special operations, you can just imagine what that was all about. Was suddenly kicked off to a nice, juicy ambassadorship in Tokyo. He's been hauled back, currently waiting instructions. And I just think it's another, so I think it's another example of Ramaphosa moving along quietly, deliberately, and trying not to, just trying to do things without being partisan.
Before we go on to the Sunday Times, I wanted to ask the both of you. I'm going to start with you, Peter. This focus on the spy agencies, this is supposed to be Zuma's playground, right?
Yeah.
This is supposed to be where he actually defeated Mbeki, because most of these people sided with him. When you read these stories and when you look at them, do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa is essentially going after Jacob Zuma in the most legal way possible? Because the president isn't anywhere near here. This is the Minister of Intelligence doing it. The review process is happening because the complaints were coming from civil society and members of the alliance that these agencies were being used for partisan reasons. How big a threat is this to President Zuma's ability to continue to influence the politics in the country and that faction in the ANC that, of course, is trying to weaken Ramaphosa's cleanup?
Well, two things, Karima. I think his style from the very beginning was to try and do things by the book and at arm's length, so that you won't find his fingerprints on events at SARS or the National Prosecutor or wherever. He wants these institutions to function independently, as is envisaged in the Constitution, for example. His problem, of course, is that the rot runs so deep in many of these institutions, and that he's going to have to take a very strong role and a strong hand in repairing these. But that runs contrary to what the independence of these institutions are.
What you don't want is the president telling the head of an institution what to do.
But that's what he's in effect going to have to do if he wants to clean this up. Now, on page 2 of Sunday Times, there's a really worrying story about pushback in the state security agency.
Exactly.
So now you're seeing people, and we're seeing it in Eskom as well, the remnants of the state capture project, mid-level employees or officials or whatever, and
all coming back.
And that's what we're seeing at the SPA. So it's very worrying for Ramaphosa. We want him, we want these institutions to succeed and function and be independent. But he's going to have to act contrary to his, to his nature in order to.
You've got, but once again, the pushback is always anonymous.
Yes.
We don't know whether it's big or small. They're available to reporters, obviously, on City Press and the Sunday Times, particularly the weekend papers. And they're threatening now. Cyril Ramaphosa says, We'll be ready for him at the NGC next year and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just perpetuating this notion that he's going to be somehow win the election and then be gotten rid of.
That's a threat that's hanging over his head. You know, the NGC next year is a very specific, it's not an elective conference, so it's very, it's almost impossible, according to the ANC's constitution, to try and remove someone, but there's no doubt that there will be.
It has incredible powers, I must tell you. It is the mid-level assessment between conferences.
But it would be interesting to hear, maybe you guys know, because I don't, what exactly is required to remove a sitting president of the ANC at an NGC?
He would have to be disciplined. There has to be charges.
But who has to? I can't just put up my hand as a member.
Let me give you an example of what happened in 2005 when Deputy President Zuma said, "I'm stepping down," right, as the Deputy President of the ANC.
Did he do it at that conference?
No, before the conference.
Yeah.
What he did, though, is he had people inside the conference demand that he be fully reinstated as the Deputy President of the African National Congress, because he was without a party, basically. So they gave him a base, and we know that Thabo Mbeki neglected the party. So what he did, and that's what I followed, is he actually took that base and worked it and got rid of Thabo Mbeki in the 2007 famous Polokwane
and incidentally,
conference.
Karima, if you read this high-level report into the intelligence community, I mean, they were involved in 2005 already, working on behalf of Jacob Zuma. Even at that NGC at the University of Pretoria in 2005, the spies were already working on behalf of Zuma. And that's how far back this report goes. And it just shows us to what extent the spy agencies, the intelligence agencies, have been put on how subservient they are to factional interests in the ANC.
How do you fix that, Peter?
Look, the recommendation of this high-level report makes a couple of strong recommendations, including legal action or charging the president and the ministers involved, which is pretty serious.
He says the former president.
The former president, yes. And also splitting it up, like you mentioned earlier, into an agency that's responsible for external operations and internal operations, exactly like they were before Zuma put them together in 2009. Obviously, to try and control it better.
I want to get to the Eskom story on the Sunday Times. It says, Koko Eskom looting frenzy. And of course, it talks about how he has managed to get international companies to put money there, and his stepdaughter is right in the middle of it. Now, Mr. Koko has presented himself as an expert to fix our electricity, coming on television interviews, talking about everything. How is it that this man can do what he does? If you look at the second page of the City Press, you have the same conflict of interest. Minister Mamuleko Ngubane is in conflict there because she is part of a structure where her government, or rather her husband, is involved in tenders. Now, this has been the heart of state capture. This is the story of state capture.
The Coca story is really good, I think.
Exactly. But why is this person not arrested? Why has the NPA not go and say, sorry, man, you have been involved in a whole range of things. You are suspicious. Surrender your passport. We're worried that you are a flight risk.
Look,
and begin investigations.
First of all, I think Peter's right. It's a good story. I mean, it refers to the Special Investigating Unit. It refers to international investigating units. There's a body of evidence, a body of work which supports that story. So it's very difficult for Mr. Koko, who's quite a celebrity on Twitter these days, presenting himself as the savior, like you said, of Eskom. It's going to be difficult to come back from that, but you would want some form of action, like you said. Now, we need people to go to jail in orange jumpsuits. But
on that orange jumpsuit note, I have to wrap up. I'm being told in my ear we have gone over time. But I think every week, Peter, we end our conversation on the basis of someone must go to jail. Someone must be in orange overall. So on that orange overall note,
Shamila Batohi, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah, that's your fix for the week. Take care. We'll see you again next week. Thank you so very much, Peter.